You have these wildly intelligent, professionally developed dream chasers who believe in themselves, whether it's delusional or not, and they are go-getters and they work hard. But they are literally still emotional children with trauma that haven't dealt with any of it, and they don't do inner work. That was me.
Yeah.
I didn't have a therapist till I was 30. And trust me, I needed one. If you want a coach, you need a therapist. If you want a therapist, you need a coach.
Alan, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to talk about what we mentioned prior, which is right before we got on here, self-discipline, self-improvement. It is my favorite thing in the world to talk about. So thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Perfect. Well, you're in the right place to talk about it.
Good. Yeah, that's good. Because some places you can't talk about it.
Really?
I don't want to say you can't, but you're in a wedding, imagine, and you're just hanging out and you start talking about habits and disciplines and habit tracking, and people are like, okay, bro. So yeah, I'm excited. Fair enough.
Yeah. So let's start with what got you into your business and how did you get started?
So there's a short version, there's a mid version, there's a really long version. I'll try to give the short to mid. Okay, so I'll start from the very beginning. When I was 2 years old, I think it's important to know the messenger as well as the message. So we'll start from the very beginning. And the first thing I want to say too, before I get into my story, is a lot of times people will hear people on podcasts, myself included, particularly in the beginning of this journey, when I got into self-improvement, and you'll be like, wow, that's the way they articulated that was so good. I didn't understand any of this at the time. When I tell this story, remember that this is me rewatching the movie of my own life in my 30s, realizing these things, even though when I was going through it, I didn't connect these dots at all, unfortunately. So when I was 2 years old, definitely born into adversity. Father passed away in a car accident when he was 28 years old when I was 2. I had an older sister and mom, so I was raised by 2 women, my mom and my older sister. And I did have a stepfather. So from 3 to 14, I had a stepfather named Steve Lazaros. My real last name is actually McCorkle. So I come from an Irish Catholic background. My dad, John, Jane, Joan, Joe, Jane, Jeanette, 6 kids. My dad's family, Irish Catholic, and John, my father, is the one who passed away in the car accident. And when that happened, when my stepdad came into the picture, we were kind of trying to be a family. And so I changed my last name to Lazaros, and we sort of didn't talk much at all to my birth father's side of the family, which, again, as a kid, I didn't understand, because we were sort of trying to pretend to be a real family, so to speak. And my mom and stepdad didn't get along well. So from 3 to 14, 14 years old was a really pivotal point, and I did not understand this at the time. Now, in hindsight, I've done a lot of therapy, and I've reflected, and I've rewatched, again, the movie of my life. So now I kind of get it. But 14, my stepfather leaves, and he takes 90% of the income with him. This is like late 90s, early 2000s. Oh, wow. And I started referring to that time in my life from 3 to 14 as boats and BS. And so we had deep sea fishing and ski trips and snowmobiles and motorcycle, and we were like fairly well off upper middle class family, at least from the outside looking in, And so when my stepdad leaves, he takes 90% of the income with him, and I go from Xbox and Dreamcast and that kind of thing, early Christmas presents, abundance financially, to I get free lunch at school now for financial support. I shop at Salvation Army and thrift stores, and I went from I can't wait to go to my dream college, WPI, to I don't even know how I'm going to go to college. And so we aren't speaking to my birth father's side much at all. My stepfather leaves, takes 90% of the income with him and his entire extended family with him. I've never seen any of them since. And then my mom at the same time, so my sister moves out because she's 17 and she moves in with her boyfriend, and I understand why. She wanted to get out of that house too. And my mom gets in a fight with her older sister, and her older sister ostracizes us pretty heavily from her side of the family. So I had no idea about this until my 30s and therapy and stuff. But by the time I'm 14 years old, in a way, I kind of lost 3 families.
Yeah.
And I just bootstrapped after that. I decided to get straight A's in high school, something called the President's Award. You have to get a 95 or above GPA all 4 years of high school. So that's 16 report cards. I got 189 in honors English. And the award behind me is signed by George W. Bush. And I got into my dream school and I got tons of scholarships and financial aid because I didn't know what else to do. My trauma response was aim higher, dream bigger, get smarter, work harder. And unfortunately, party more too, by the way, which we'll get into.
Okay.
So I go to college and become a computer engineer. Math and science was always my jam. And then I went to master's in business, got my MBA, stayed an extra year, and then I job hopped a bunch. Went from a bunch of different tech companies. So iRobot, Tyco Safety Products, Oz Development, Simplex Grinnell, Sensata Technologies, which used to be Texas Instruments, and then I ended up at a company called Cognex. Cognex's motto was work hard, play hard. I started an inside sales team there, inside sales engineering, and then I got promoted to outside sales engineering. And my motto was work hard, play harder. And again, I didn't know it at the time, but I was definitely, my mom and stepdad liked to party. They definitely had a pleasure-centered paradigm. Life was about fun. That's why I say boats and BS, right? Because it looks really fun from the outside in, but inside out, it's not so fun. And I was still running that same paradigm. And so to get to the original question of how did I start my business, I'm 26 years old. I'm working for Cognex. I'm making almost $200,000 a year at this point. I went from 65 to 85, 85 to 105, 105 to 125, and then 125 to almost 200. $84,000 worth of school debt paid off in a single year, 150 grand in an investment account, stocks, tech companies, ETFs, just doing my thing. On my way to my dream of what I thought was my dream, which is become a Fortune 50 CEO like my hero, Steve Jobs. And I'm 26, and I get into my own car accident. So I'm up in New Hampshire with my little cousin. We're not drinking. We're not partying or anything. And which is fortunate because I used to definitely party too much and too often. And we're heading to TGI Fridays, and this is the really bad winter where in New Hampshire the snowbanks were covering the signs. I was supposed to yield at a fork in the road, and I didn't. I ended up on the wrong side of the road. And I looked up from the GPS, and I saw what I thought was a Mack truck in front of me. Biggest, brightest lights ever. And I calculated in that moment, and if anyone's ever had the death of a loved one or death of a pet or faced mortality themselves, it was that moment for sure of, this is the end. There's no way that we survive this. Fortunately, it was a lift-kitted pickup truck, like a very lift-kitted pickup truck. There's a lot of those up in New Hampshire. So it was not a Mack truck. If it was a Mack truck, I would not be here. So fortunately, it was not. Head-on collision, I think I was doing probably 25, luckily. I think they were probably doing 35, so that's a big deal. And I usually will show the picture of the car because this is no fender bender. But fortunately, the airbags did deploy, and I was driving a 2004 Volkswagen Passat. I was big on paying off debt and saving money and investing for the future. So I paid for this car in $5,000 cash, and it saved my life. So I used to call this car the Tank. German engineered Volkswagen Passat, steel trap of a car. And I used to call it the Tank, and the Tank saved my life. So I'm very grateful for that. Both airbags did deploy. Cousin hurt his knee on the airbag. I hurt my face on the airbag. So physically we were okay, even though the car was just absolutely totaled. Mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, though, I was so rattled.
Wow.
Because, circle back to the beginning of my life, my dad died when he was 28 in a car accident. And I've seen pictures of his car, and they don't look very different than my car did.
Wow.
And so I got the second chance that he never got. And I think a lot of people have a relationship with mortality, like intellectually. Mine has never been intellectual. Mine's always been emotional, and I've really experienced the ripple effect of my sister losing her dad at 6 and my mom losing her husband at 31. And and me never having a father. I mean, I always say this to people because it's so hard to relate to if you haven't lost your father. Like, picture your father and your relationship with your father and all of that, memories, good, bad, ugly, all of that's gone. Imagine you don't have any of that. So it's just so, and again, I don't know any different, but I see my whole life, people with their dads and stuff. And so it's always been different for me, I would say that. And now we have a charity that actually on Father's Day gets kids together without fathers, and we rent out the YMCA and we play basketball. And so what a traditionally sad day.
Nice.
Because my business partner, Kevin, he didn't have a father either. His father left. So mine passed away, his left, both raised by two women. But now we host this sort of thing to make a sad day into a really fun one. But the point of that whole story for me, in hindsight, at the time I didn't understand this, is I got the second chance to be successful from the inside out, not the outside in. So prior to 26, I'm 35 now. I often joke, I'm hoping to hit puberty at 36. I look very young. But anyways, so prior to 26, I was successful from the outside in. A lot of money, beautiful girlfriend, tons of friends, college friends and corporate friends and high school friends, and they all partied together, and we had the hoopla for sure. And more money than I knew what to do with, didn't have any responsibilities, I didn't have kids, I didn't have a mortgage, I just tons of just income. And it was definitely, I went off the rails, for lack of better phrasing. But now, after 26, I promised myself that I would flip that script. I promised myself, because I was filled with regret, I promised myself that instead of being achiever at the expense of fulfillment, I'm going to be focusing on the inner work and the fulfillment, and hopefully success will be a byproduct of that. And when I say hopefully, I went all the way past broke in entrepreneur land, which many of us do. And now, fortunately, at this stage, we are doing very well. So I finally surpassed my old best, but it took a lot longer than I thought. And we started a little podcast called, I had Conversations Change Lives podcast. Kevin had the Hyperconscious podcast. And then we had the worst. So he was my first guest. I was his first guest. And then we teamed up and we had the worst podcast name ever, which is the Conversations Change Lives meets Hyperconscious podcast. And then eventually we went all in on Hyperconscious, which is change the way you think, change the way you act, change the way you live. And then eventually we rebranded to Next Level University. And now we're Next Level University. And now we have a company and a 21-person team and 22 departments and
amazing
global business. And so, yeah, it's been a hell of a story. And that car accident was 9 years ago. So it's been a slow build, compound over time. And I'm 9 years into my post-quarter life crisis.
Amazing. Wow. Can you expand a little bit more when you talk about the success from the outside in versus the inside out, and what that difference is and what that looks like for you?
Yeah. So the first thing would be, I was always improvement oriented. Very, very improvement oriented. I didn't know it, but I was very mastery driven. So whether it was playing video games or snowboarding or basketball, my passions, I was always very achievement oriented and improvement oriented, but I wasn't focused on improving myself. I think the world is separated, and I've noticed this. It's because now I've coming up on my 10,000 hours of podcasting and speaking and interviewing and coaching, and people, all different industries, all different backgrounds, all over the world, all different countries, my team, Spain, Italy, and all this stuff. You realize these patterns. So everyone thinks it's a you problem when it's a human problem. And only the coaches and therapists among us know that, because we deal with enough different people from different walks of life to, this is a thing. This isn't like a you thing. This is totally a thing. And that's the benefit of being a coach or a therapist, is you get to just realize that everyone is going through their own unique flavor of the same principles, the same struggles. And so, to answer your original question, I got into self-improvement instead of external improvement. And so the world, I think, is broken into these two sort of buckets. And I'm trying really hard to help people become ambidextrous. What I mean by that is, you have these people that I meet that are heart-driven, wonderful, compassionate, purpose-driven people that understand themselves, they're emotionally intelligent, and they're emotionally connected. But they do not win in the economy. That has not never, but usually they aren't that successful. As a computer engineer numbers guy, it's like alarming to see these wonderful humans just They don't have a resume. They don't have a LinkedIn. They don't know how to network and interview and that kind of stuff. And then you see these other people, professional development through the roof. Resume, boom, cover letter, articulate, communication, professional skills, hard skills, spreadsheets, numbers, science, math. They got it. And then their marriages are awful because they're emotionally children still. Right. And two guesses which one I was, right? You already know. But the point is, you have these wildly intelligent, professionally developed dream chasers who believe in themselves, whether it's delusional or not, and they are go-getters and they work hard. But they are literally still emotional children with trauma that haven't dealt with any of it, and they don't do inner work. That was me. Yeah. I didn't have a therapist till I was 30. And trust me, I needed one. If you want a coach, you need a therapist. If you want a therapist, you need a coach. Success matters too, right? So I think professional development and personal development are two different things. Professional development is improving your skills toward achievement. Personal development is the inner work, core values, fulfillment, emotional intelligence, emotional regulation, emotional maturity. I didn't realize this, but like most men, particularly American men, I was emotionally immature. But I didn't know that until I became more mature. And so statistically speaking, I think men tend to be more emotionally immature, and I can say that because I'm a man, and I'm guilty as charged. But I mean, all women know that, right? I mean, it's just obvious. Yeah. Men are just, rub some dirt in it. We don't have diaries growing up, or at least we didn't. I didn't get a journal until I was, after my car accident at 26. Now I have a journal that I do it every day. But the whole inner work, self-reflect piece for me is the self-improvement part. But that didn't come really. Improvement was always there. Self-improvement didn't come until after 26. And so that's my new focus is both matter. How do we become ambidextrous?
Okay. And what was that? What was your entry into self-improvement? What was that like for you? Where did you start?
So it's funny. So I started with the typical road. So you start with like the Tony Robbins and that kind of thing. So Tony Robbins' TED Talk still to this day. I use this quote. I have this necklace around my neck with a star on it. Oh my God, it's not on my neck because it broke earlier, so it's right there. It's normally on my neck. So there it is, little North Star. Normally I wear it. The guys in the room are like, dude, it's a chain. It's not a necklace. No, it's a necklace. But anyways, so when you're in the dark, you can see stars you can't normally see. So stars are there during the day. You just don't see them. It's not until you're in the dark that you see these stars shine. And to me, it wasn't until after my car accident that I started noticing certain stars. Two stars that I noticed. One was a book by Bronnie Ware called The Top 5 Regrets of the Dying. I almost died in a car accident. I'm filled with regret. What a coincidence, right? I find a book called The Top 5 Regrets of the Dying. Bronnie Ware, an Australian woman. I've actually interviewed her 4 years later, which was cool. I got to interview one of my heroes on my podcast, which was awesome. I even got to ask her, like, what are your thoughts on this, about her book? But so I was fanboying pretty hard on that one. But anyways, so she worked in hospice for 8 years and with the terminally ill. And she found that everybody had similar regrets. And so she wrote a book on it. And the number one regret of the dying is I wish I had lived a life true to myself and not what others expected of me. Which I felt deeply, for sure. After the car accident, it was like, whoa. Was I achieving to prove that I'm worthy of my stepfather's love? Was I achieving because of the trauma of my dad's death? Was I achieving because I'm good at math and engineers make a lot of money? Like, did I really choose any of this? Was I on autopilot? And I think it's a little bit of both, right?
Yeah.
And ironically, I still ended up a CEO of a tech company, so it's like interesting, right? But anyways, Tony Robbins is where I started and that book. And Tony Robbins' TED Talk, regardless of what you think of Tony Robbins' TED Talk is world class. It's why we do what we do, and that is, in my opinion, the best TED Talk ever done. World class. And so he gets you to focus on the inner part. And so that's where self-improvement started for me. And then I went down the self-improvement rabbit hole of all, Rich Dad, Poor Dad and
Yeah.
Think and Grow Rich, which is in hindsight very racist and sexist, and obviously not representative of women whatsoever. So I did that in book club. I have a book club I do every week, and I regret it. It's mostly amazing women, and I'm like, oh, this is the worst choice ever, right? This was written in the early 90s, early 1900s.
Yeah.
And then I went through, the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People and all the main books. And then you learn and you grow and you mature and you realize that a lot of that is, and then eventually you get to the nitty gritty, like The Art of Impossible and Peak Performance. And then you do neuroscience, and then you go back to the inner world of internal family systems and all these different things. So to me, the world is so split into external skill development, professional development, and then internal personal development, inner work, therapy, internal family systems, CBT, all those things. And so I think you really, what's ironic is that if what you wanted was what you needed, you'd already have it.
Right.
I wanted the next Peak Performance book. That isn't going to do it for me. What changed my world was getting a therapist and working on the inner stuff. But quite frankly, some people that have therapists and love the inner work, you need peak performance. You need habits. You need numbers. Some people don't know their numbers. And for me, that's wild because I love numbers. And so we all don't really know what we're missing because we only have half the equation. And then we surround ourselves with people who also love that half of the equation, So I hope that we can all be open-minded enough to learn from the other side, for lack of better phrasing.
Yeah, great. You've mentioned a little bit about fulfillment and the pleasure paradigm. Can you expand more on that and tell us about what's the difference between pleasure and fulfillment?
Pleasure is my life's trap. So I grew up in a pleasure-centered paradigm, and a paradigm is a fancy word for your deepest unconscious core belief. Mm-hmm. So I grew up in an environment with my mom and stepdad where I don't even know if they're aware of this, to be honest. I know my mom is because she was at one of my events and I talked about it, but which was tough for me, by the way, because it's like mirror time. Yeah. So Mom, if you're listening, I love you, but I would have done some things differently. So the pleasure-centered paradigm I grew up in is this unconscious belief that life is about fun. Life is about just running amok and just having as much fun as possible. And to me, that's just really ignorant. I'm not trying to be unkind. Yeah. It's just wicked ignorant, and I fell victim to it. Yeah. So pleasure is all the things that are trigger warning for everyone, by the way. I'll keep it very brief, but it's alcohol, it's drugs, it's pornography, it's I always use this as an example. Making love to the love of your life is pleasurable and deeply fulfilling. Watching pornography is just pleasure. There's no fulfillment there. And there's a million other examples of that, but Netflix binging is pleasurable. That's why we do it. That's why they only give you 3 seconds between episodes, because they want you to just zone out and be a drone. And I get it. I get why they do that. They would need to keep you on their platform. I get it. But my point is, you've got to hack back and realize that, okay, you need pleasure in your life, but it can't be the goal. You need pleasure in your life, but it can't be the goal. And for me, unconsciously, it was the goal. So I had achievement, and then I had friends and pleasure. And I just lived a life where naturally everyone was trying to have a blast. I was the only achiever amongst my friends, which now makes perfect sense. And I've since lost most of those friends from prior to 26 because we don't have anything in common anymore, because they're still in a different paradigm. So after my car accident, my paradigm went from pleasure, friends, and growth, pleasure, friends, and achievement, to growth, mission, service. And so now we joked at the beginning, or I did, being at a wedding talking about your favorite personal development book is not common. It's not that cool. It's not something that you can, Thanksgiving dinner, you're not going to talk about your deepest desires of dreams and goals and aspirations and inner work and what you talked about in therapy. That's why therapy is so important, because it creates a safe space to actually talk about real things instead of the Patriots or the Super Bowl. Like, I didn't even know when the Super Bowl was. And so I want to hopefully live in a world where we can make personal development and professional development cool again. And by again, I don't know if I'd say again, because I don't know if it was ever cool. But to answer the original question, to go back from pleasure and that being the goal to fulfillment being the goal. Now, the deeper layer of this real quick is fulfillment needs to be a byproduct, not necessarily the goal. So, for example, I use laughing as an example. So if I say something funny and you laugh, that's enjoyable, but I can't force you to laugh, at least not authentically. Just like you can't force yourself to be fulfilled. And we struggle with this. We wake up in the morning. It's like, well, I have a roof over my head and I've got food in my fridge and I've got my health. And why aren't I more fulfilled? Because it doesn't work that way. Fulfillment is a byproduct of aligning yourself with your core values and your goals and your dreams. I've always had dreams ever since I was a little kid. I don't know if that's because of self-belief. I don't know if it's because my childhood was brutal. I don't know if it's because the past was painful and the present was painful. So the only thing I could do was go into the future and hope for a bigger, better, brighter one. But what I do know is life without dreams is not fulfilling. You don't have to have you don't have to want to climb Mount Everest, but you have to want to climb something. And I'm convinced of this. And the biology, the neurobiology talks about this. The research shows this. You have to climb towards meaningful goals, even if they're small. They don't have to mean anything to anyone else, but you have to climb toward meaningful goals because that's what helps us become stronger and smarter and helps us grow and contribute beyond ourselves. And that's where fulfillment lives, is growth, contribution, and higher quality of life consistently over time. And so pleasure is let me have as much fun as possible, and fulfillment is, listen, this is the harder road, but this is the road that I'm meant to take. This is the road where I can hit my head to the pillow at night and say, I did something meaningful today. And if you can find a way to have some fun along the way on that journey, even though it is more challenging, I think that fulfillment will beat a path to your door.
Great. So let's chunk down on that a little more on fulfillment. So what are some of the habits or the behaviors that helped you to optimize your performance and help lead you towards fulfillment?
Well, I think it changes for everyone. And the word optimize, I think, is something that Emilia and I have three core values. My beautiful girlfriend and I, we have three core values written above so we have this kitchen and we have this sort of doorway into the kitchen. I don't know what it's called, like arc. And above it, we have our three core values. And it's written in these beautiful letters, and I hung them myself.
Nice.
Erudite, optimize, and align. Erudite is a fancy word for knowledge, and just being prolifically aware. I don't know if I'm weird. I know I'm weird. I just want to know everything. I feel like knowledge is the most important thing in the world. Like, what's the difference between a smartphone and a dumb phone, right? The dumb phone is less capable. It can't do as much. And so I think of humans the same way. And I know that can be triggering for some, so please try not to villainize me. I've just always needed to know everything. I don't know why, but I just want to understand everything. I study, like last night I was reading a book called Hidden Potential before bed by Adam Grant. I study Stephen Hawking and Einstein and all this stuff. I've always been a little bit of a weird nerd, but erudite is one of the core values. The next one is align. Align means you have a dream or a goal, and you might not have perfect clarity on it, but you're aligning with it. I always say, push yourself to stay in the pull. Whether you're aware of it or not, if you really get quiet and you really get still and you get rid of some of the BS in your life, like I did after 26, you do have a calling. You have something that you're called to, that you're drawn to. Just like in love, when you fall in love, you're drawn to that person. There's a reason. You might not know the reason yet, but there's a reason. So you got to trust it, and that takes courage. Well, what if they don't like me? What if they reject me? What if, right? So courage to stay in the calling. That's alignment. The third one is optimize, and I'm not convinced many people really know what that means, and I'm a math and science nerd, so I always have. So there's something referred to as an optimal stopping problem. And the best way to describe this, I think, is actually nachos. So you put the nachos in. The optimal amount of time is 3 minutes, and the cheese is perfect, and they're delicious. If you put them in for 1 minute, the cheese isn't melted at all, and it's gross. If you put them in for 4 minutes, it burns, and it's... So the optimal stopping problem, in computer science terms, is 3.5 minutes, or whatever, 3 minutes. Everything's like that. So people always say, that person always does the right thing. Listen, there is no one right thing. Okay, murder bad, yes, but if someone's attacking your child, murder good. So Aristotle says, who can do the right thing in the right way, at the right time, with the right people, in the right amount, for the right reason. That's why human beings are so complicated. The moral and ethical dilemmas and the Republican and Democrat and blah, 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 blah. Everyone's wrong and everyone thinks they're right. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
What I do think is true is that it depends on the goal, it depends on the person, it depends on the circumstance. Am I saying the right things right now? Am I saying the optimal things right now? Am I getting through at all? I used to think I was a strong communicator until I partnered with Kev and realized everyone likes him better. And now I understand that I'm a strong communicator to a group of computer engineers. But anyways, so this word optimal, optimize. The science shows that you can only optimize for one thing at a time. So right now, Terry, I'm optimizing for your audience.
Yep.
I'm optimizing for this interview. But if something happens to my pets or my girlfriend, you better believe I'm cutting this immediately and I'm going to her. And I'm going to re-optimize to something more pertinent.
Yep.
The problem is we live in the 21st century. We're bombarded with distractions at all times. How do you optimize for your dreams? And that's the question to live. And the question becomes, okay, what do you measure? Okay, what you measure, you focus on. What you focus on determines where you invest your time, effort, and money. So my job as a coach, a business coach, but also we do relationship talks coaching. We coach couples as well. If you're focused on the wrong stuff, you're going to do the wrong things. And if you do the wrong things, you're going to get the wrong results. And then what are you going to want to do? Escape.
Yep.
Fulfillment is when you align towards your dreams and optimize your life, design your life around those dreams. How do you put the nachos in for the right amount of time? The problem is it's not nachos. It's 8 million decisions every day. Even you with this guest. Is this guest resonating? Is this the right guest? Is this the right guest for my audience? Is my audience growing? How do I promote this? How do I get Alan to promote this? It's these infinite questions and it can get really overwhelming. So if you can't cognitively handle that much or emotionally handle that much, you're going to escape into Netflix. And so optimizing your life for fulfillment means when I am fulfilled, even though it was hard, do more of it. If I have regret, check in. You know what? Why do I regret that? Okay, that's not aligned. Okay?
Yeah.
Fulfillment and regret are the two best teachers, I think. And if you dance between fulfillment and regret and optimize your life for your dreams, I know I make it sound a lot easier than it is. That's the best I've got.
I love that how you explained that fulfillment and regret being our best teachers. I think it's a really great way of measuring sort of where we are and gauging what we're doing. Now, I've heard you talk on other podcasts about showing up for your highest self. And can you share a little bit about that and what that means to you?
Yeah, so your conscience, your highest self, your spiritual being, are we human beings with a spirit or are we spiritual beings with a human body? And I think it's the second, but everything's duality. It's always both. And that's what makes life so complicated. It's you have to be super strong, but you also have to be warm and loving and kind. Most people are one or the other. Which one was I growing up, right? Super strong and driven, but not warm and loving and kind. And that's natural. Now I've become more warm, loving, and kind. But everything's a duality. And so the idea here is, how can you look at the other side and how do you realize that every upside has a downside? And how do you realize that every strength you have comes with a weakness? Confidence is a strength of mine. Arrogance is a weakness. Yeah. So I need humility. I don't need to work on confidence. I never have. You can tell just by talking to me. That's not a problem. Right?
Yep.
But I do have to work on humility. Other people, they're not confident at all, and they think I'm arrogant. What if I'm just really confident and sometimes arrogant? Yes. So they don't need to work on humility. You're good. You're already super humble. Work on the confidence piece. And so what happens is we don't want to look at our weaknesses. We double down on our strengths, and now we're not well-rounded. And then
Right.
we are either super successful in the economy, but our marriages aren't good, and we take better care of our Porsche than our kids. One of my mentors, who is not a mentor anymore.
Yeah.
Or
Good.
you have this wonderful relationships, everyone loves you, you're kind and loving, but you're not courageous and stern enough to get your worth in the economy.
Yeah.
And so even in this moment, I'm humbled. I forget what the original question was.
That's okay.
I'm so sorry.
That's okay. Showing up for your highest self. What does that mean for you?
Awesome. Okay, beautiful.
Yeah.
Showing up for your highest self, I think, is courage. I didn't know this until recently. 2 types of courage. I always thought I was courageous. Absolutely not. I'm not socially courageous. Okay, I'm courageous when it comes to achieve. Like, I'll step on stage, I'll do it. Okay, I'll show up to the interview. Professional development, I'm courageous as hell. Right, apply to the school even though you won't get in. Right, I've always been. When it comes to social courage, I mean, standing up to my mother, speaking my truth when someone's bullying me, telling a friend, listen, I disagree with you. That's not accurate. You're wrong. And I'm not trying to be mean, but I'm more aware than you are. Yeah. My social courage was so low. We call it a truth dial. Where's your truth? So everyone think of a relationship where your truth dial is really high. That other person is probably not that insecure.
Right.
Now everyone think of the relationship in your life where the truth dial is super low. You feel suppressed, walking on eggshells. You don't really talk about the truth. That other person is really insecure. We dance around the insecurities. I dance around the insecurities of other people. I used to a lot more. I'm not nearly as much, obviously, based on this interview. But for me, I used to fawn. Fawn is a trauma response. Fight, flight, freeze, and fawn. And so highest self is this. Highest self is courage. Some of you need more courage in your professional careers. You need to put yourself out there. You need to post that content. You need to share that story. Other people, you have got to, and this was me, I was such a coward. You have got to say, you know what? Just because your brother was a personal trainer, don't tell me how to lift. You know those people who have opinions about everything but know nothing?
Yep.
Right? They've never held down a job in their life, but they're telling you about your career. It's brutal. You have to shield bump the bullies. And I'm telling you, I love people. I always have. I hate bullies.
Yeah.
I hate bullies so much. My stepdad was such a bully, and I didn't realize that I was a coward. And the bullies don't get humbled when you don't have the courage to stand up to them. When you don't have the courage to stick up for what you believe in. I always stuck up for what I believed in my actions behind the scenes when no one was watching. I didn't have the courage to do it in public, and I didn't have the courage to call people out on their BS when I knew I needed to. So I would shrink and shrink and shrink. Some people puff up when they're insecure, and they become the puffer fish, and they pretend to know things they don't. And then the turtles all hide in their shell and let that happen. Unfortunately, it tends to be women who hide in the shell. Not always, but tends to be. I was one of them as well, by the way. And unfortunately, men are so insecure deep down that they have to have an opinion about everything. And we know all the stuff when in reality we haven't opened a book in 30 years. And so again, obviously you're seeing some of my pain under this, but the highest self road is always courage. It's the road that has some risk. Let life touch you. Let the fear in, feel it. Don't pretend it's not there. And say, you know what? I'm afraid to say this. I'm afraid to do this. But I'm going to feel the fear, and I'm going to have courage. And I'm going to do it anyway. And when you do, you'll have a little bit of emotional hangover, and you'll expand on the inside. You'll have self-respect. You'll have self-worth.
Right.
And if you shrink and hide, and everyone's shrinking and hiding somewhere, including me, you will not have the self-respect and self-worth and the self-esteem necessary to achieve your dreams. And then you will have regret at the end because you know deep, deep, deep down, regardless of whether or not Alan said it on some podcast, that you didn't live up to your true potential because you let people keep you small. You let your own fear keep you small.
Yeah, great advice. So if people are looking to learn more about you, about your podcast, and everything that you offer, what's the best place to connect with you?
Thank you. This has been awesome, Terry. I really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you.
I felt very safe to express a lot here, and I think self-expression
Good, I
is so.
appreciate that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me. Where can you find me?
Yeah.
NextLevelUniverse.com. So we have a website that is not Next Level University. I always try to tell this story briefly.
Yeah.
The person who holds NextLevelUniversity.com is asking for an insane amount of money for it. So we said, you know what? Yeah, right, of course. May or may not be a male, right? I'm kidding.
Right.
So we said, you know what? We're going to have NextLevelUniverse.com,
Even better.
which includes
Yeah.
all things Next Level University. So it's NextLevelUniverse.com, spelled just like it sounds. You can Google my name,
Perfect.
Alan Lazaros, AlanLazaros. I'll come up on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn. Our podcast is called
Perfect.
Next Level University, spelled just like it sounds. We're on all the podcast platforms.
Excellent.
And we've got a monthly meetup every month. We do book club. We've got a journal. We got all kinds of cool stuff going on. So reach out. If you do
Great.
DM me, please DM me, or you can email me, Alan@nextleveluniverse.com, ALAN. If you do reach out, just please provide context, just because obviously we all get a lot of spam these days. So just say, hey,
Yeah.
I heard you on Terry's show. I loved what you said about XYZ, and I would just love to connect. And I don't know what will come of it, but good things can come of it. So
Yeah.
reach out.
Perfect. That's great. Now I have some rapid fire questions if you'll indulge me. And this is
Absolutely.
just for the audience to get to know you a little bit more behind the scenes. So,
Terry, I'm in trouble.
favorite-
I'm long-winded.
Oh, it'll
Do
be,
I have a time
it'll be-
limit or what?
No, it's totally up to you. Favorite
When you
book?
say rapid fire, I get insecure. Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh, fair enough. Fair enough. Favorite book, or to help you, favorite book that you like to recommend.
Nice. Favorite
Yeah.
book of all time, The Compound Effect by Darren Hardy.
Excellent.
It's not necessarily because Darren's the best, although I do respect Darren's work deeply. It's the principle of the compound effect is the most important principle I actually think in the universe. It's either Pareto or the compound
Yeah.
effect, and if you combine those two, it's wild. So the compound effect
Right.
is just the most honest, non-fluffy. If I could go back in time, I would just slide that book across the table to like my 14-year-old self and just say, listen, I know life's been hard. I know you lost 3 families. Like, here's the book. This is it. This is going to get you out of here, you know? So the compound effect.
Yeah. Excellent. Great choice. Favorite food?
Sushi. You know, it's funny.
Yes.
Usually I say sushi immediately. The hesitation you sensed. I got sick. I don't think it was food poisoning.
Oh no.
But last week we had sushi. Emilia and I, we love it. Our first date was sushi. And it felt like someone was taking my lower intestines, twisting it in a knot, and then pulling it.
Oh.
And it was
It's
right
awful.
around the same time that I had sushi. I don't think it was the sushi, but now I'm a little queasy. So that was the hesitation to the sushi. Yeah. So I think it's still sushi.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Understandable. The hesitation is understandable. Yeah, I love sushi too. My husband and I have a standing Monday night sushi date. We've been doing it
that's
for years.
awesome.
Yeah.
Do you guys
Yeah.
make your own?
No.
Oh,
we
okay.
tried once. It was
You-
very messy, and we just decided we'll let the pros
Good for you.
make the sushi. Yeah,
That's the entrepreneurial way. Good for you. Let the pros do it.
exactly.
Yeah.
Outsource the sushi.
Yeah. On the side hustle, sushi chef, you know?
Yeah,
Podcaster
exactly.
/ sushi chef, Terry, you know? Funny.
Biggest pet peeve.
Bullying, hands down.
Yeah.
People who try to tell you how to live. Listen, I know I've said a lot of advice of what you should and shouldn't do. Here's the
Yeah.
truth. You have a choice, and you should make your own choice, and you shouldn't take my word for it. If I could go back and say, Alan, listen, these people don't know what the hell they're talking about. To be honest, you know,
Yeah.
our parents, they know the way. No, they don't. Oh my goodness, right? Especially not mine. No offense,
yeah.
mom and stepdad, and but truth be told, you guys didn't know. They didn't have Google. They didn't have Audible.
Yeah.
They didn't have TED Talks. I get it. I have empathy, but you cannot presuppose people know things. Be very careful.
Yeah.
You got to do your own research, and you got to make your own decisions, and you got to take responsibility for those decisions. So my biggest pet peeve is bullying and people trying to tell other people what they can and can't do.
Yeah, good call. Who inspires you?
I used to have a whole list of heroes that I would have said, and most of them have fallen from the pedestal with all the love, and the pedestal that I gave them wasn't, that's in my own consciousness, not theirs. So like I mentioned Steve Jobs earlier, Steve's good at one thing. Everyone's an example and a warning. So Steve's an example for what's possible and a warning for being a dick. But truth be told, the one person who still has never fallen from any pedestal is my beautiful girlfriend, Emilia. She is the hardest working, most well-rounded, most heart-driven, most incredible, extraordinary human being. I used to have past intimate partners that were wonderful. And I remember there were times in my relationship where, and maybe this is just a me thing, where I didn't have as much reverence for them as I would have wanted. And with Emilia, it's different. It's almost like, even regardless of me, I would be blown away. And I live with her. So there is no, like, facade. There is no social media highlight reel. It's just, she is just that incredible. The most virtuous human I've ever met in my entire life. And she's an absolute genius, and she's beautiful in every way. And I've never seen her do a thing to hurt anyone or anything. And unfortunately, she's also a huge mirror, and a lot of people attack her, but that's par for the course.
Right. Yeah. Amazing. 3 things you would take with you to a deserted island.
Nice.
Yeah.
I don't know if I've ever been asked that before. I've heard it been asked. I don't think I have ever been asked. A fishing pole, for sure. Get some sushi going. Wow. 3 things? My beautiful girlfriend, Emilia. Could I bring her with me?
Of course.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I want to bring Emilia for sure. My favorite person in the whole entire world. And a 3rd thing. Yeah, it's gotta be a knife. It's gotta be like a big, very useful machete type knife that you can chop trees down with and stuff like that. And then also fillet the fish for the sushi, of course.
Perfect. Yeah, very practical. Yeah. Celebrity you'd like to have dinner with, dead or alive?
Wonderful. Yeah, that would have been different so long ago. Now it's dead or alive celebrity I'd like to have dinner with. Leonardo da Vinci. I know. I went to a museum recently, exhibit with Leonardo da Vinci. You ever been to the Biltmore in North Carolina? You ever hear of the Biltmore?
But I've heard of it.
It's a beautiful estate. Yeah, Emilia and I went. It was unbelievable. And there's a Leonardo da Vinci exhibit, and it was wild to see the blend of art and science to such a drastic extent. I mean, in the 1400s, everyone knows the Mona Lisa. I don't know why. I'm not a big art guy. I'm a science guy. So, like, is that really... To me, I think Leonardo da Vinci is sitting there in his spiritual self being like, seriously, that's what did it? The helicopter and the scuba gear, none of that, right? None of that. No. So I would love to talk to him and hear his honest truth about how ignorant human beings are. And because he thought of the helicopter in the years 1450. And he was actually designing it, right? And he tried to replicate the dragonfly. And if you study Leonardo da Vinci, he's one of the most prolific. It's unbelievable. Talk about being ahead of your time, right? And I do feel sometimes Emilia and I are a little ahead of our time. I know how arrogant that might sound. Like personal growth, right? After COVID, a lot more people were into it.
Yeah.
I feel like the consciousness of human beings are coming up, and I've always felt ahead of that curve. And it's been really sad, to be honest with you, because you don't want to outgrow people, and you want to pour into the consciousness of humanity, but it can be really difficult. So I would love to talk to him about how hard that was to be so far ahead of everyone else's understanding.
Yeah, absolutely. And last one, your go-to karaoke song.
Lately, it's actually been, so we sing to our cat because that's when so she loves song. I don't know if this is normal because I've never had cats before. Her name's Tauriel. Yeah. And when we sing, her and I, she just comes and snuggles. It's the cutest thing.
Aw, but that's so sweet.
She is. She's such a sweetheart. We have 2 cats. One's Tiger Lily and Tauriel. And Tiger Lily not as much, but Tauriel loves the song. So we've been singing. I don't know if you've seen the new Hunger Games movie. but there's a song
Yes.
in it. You
Yeah.
can't, you can't take my charm. You can't take my, and I love that song. So we've been singing that a lot lately. And I think it's a
Nice.
really good song too, because in the midst of suffering and no freedom, there's certain things you can never take. And I felt that way growing up the way I did, where it was tough upbringing for sure, in every way I could possibly, can't even explain it on a public medium, but there's certain things you can't take. You can't take my dreams. You can't take it in here. So yeah, that's my karaoke go-to for sure.
Great choice. Well, thank you so much for coming on today. I really appreciate this. I know the audience is going to get a lot of value out of it. And do you have any final thoughts before we wrap up?
The last thing would be, life is a choice. You have a choice. And not choosing is probably based on fear, because you don't want to take responsibility when things go wrong. They're gonna.
Yeah.
Nothing grows on the fence. If you're good at the professional development side, great, good for you, but work on the personal development side. If you're great on the personal development side, great, good for you, but success matters too. And I want everyone to be successful and fulfilled. I say that to my clients all the time. It's my job to help you become the most successful and fulfilled possible. And the cool part about that is, if you're successful at things that you don't care about, you won't be fulfilled. And if you're fulfilled but not successful, you won't be free. You won't have freedom, so you won't be fulfilled. So they're super connected. They walk hand in hand. They have to walk hand in hand. I've been both. I've been fulfilled and broke and not really that successful, and it wasn't fully fulfilling because I couldn't live my free life.
Yeah.
And I've been successful and deeply unfulfilled as well on the inside. So I think you really do need both. And so I hope that everyone figures out which one you're good at and work on the other one.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you so much for coming on today.
Thank you for having me, Terry. I really appreciate it. This was great. And reach out anytime.
Sounds good.